We all have financial struggles, but one man decided that it would be better to murder his whole entire family, including his mother, than to deal with welfare, and stated he wanted to save their souls. He was able to eat lunch, pack up, and then go start a new life, all while police were searching for him. But it took years to find the man who'd started a new life under a new name. This is the story of Mr. John List. Born in Bay City, Michigan, John List was the only child his German parents, Frederick and Alma, had. Like his father, John List was a devout Lutheran and a Sunday school teacher. John had graduated from Bay City High School in 1943. That same year, he enlisted in the United States Army and served as a laboratory technician during World War II. His father died in 1944, and after this, List was discharged in 1946 from the Army. He enrolled at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, where he earned a bachelor's degree in business administration and a master's degree in accounting. He was very intelligent, and he was commissioned lieutenant through the ROTC. In November 1950, as the Korean War escalated, John List was recalled to active military service. Whilst there, he met Helen Morris. Now, she was a widow. She'd already been married to an infantry officer. He'd been killed in action in Korea, and she lived nearby with her only daughter, Brenda. John and Helen hit it off, and on the 1st of December 1951, they married in Baltimore, Maryland, where the family moved to North Carolina. The Army, recognizing John's accounting skills, reassigned him to the Finance Corps. And after completion of his second tour in 1952, John List worked for an accounting firm in Detroit, and then as an audit supervisor at a paper company. And shortly after this, his 3 children were born. By 1959, John List had risen to general supervisor of the company's accounting department. But at home, things were not great, as Helen was beginning to become an alcoholic. She'd become increasingly unstable with the alcohol issues and syphilis. She'd contracted this from her first husband, which she did not disclose to John before the marriage in 1960, and he never knew about it for 18 years. She rarely left the house, and all in all, the family were known as quite reclusive. Now, the kids attended school, and John would venture out as if going to work, but did not speak to neighbours, and no one really knew the family. His stepdaughter Brenda, as she got older, she met a man and she married and left the household. And John moved the remainder of the family to Rochester, New York, to take a job at Xerox, where he eventually became director of accounting services. In 1965, John again accepted another position, and this time it was vice president at a bank in New Jersey, and moved his whole family, his wife and his children and his mother again, into a place called Breeze Knoll. It was a 19-room Victorian mansion located at 431 Hillside Avenue in Westfield, New Jersey. But things at home were not rosy. John was a proud man, and when in 1971 the bank closed, he'd lost his job. He had financial difficulties, was struggling to pay the bills on his mansion and his car and just everyday essentials, but John continued dressing for work, eating breakfast and maintaining the same routine. He pretended he was going to work, but instead he would go to job interviews or sit at the Westfield train station reading newspapers all day. And for money, during this time, John would divert his mother's money from her account to his account to keep paying the family's lavish lifestyle. The house was classed as a mansion. John had earned a good living up until now, and the house contained a granny annex for his mother and a ballroom. Not that they ever had balls, but it did. And on November the 9th, 1971, John List decided he was going to murder his entire family. When the children arrived home from school, he shot his wife Helen, who was 47 at the time, in the back of the head. He then shot his mother Alma, 84, above her left eye. And as his daughter Patricia, 16, and younger son Frederick, 13, arrived home from school, John List shot each of them in the back of the head. And after making himself lunch, sitting there with the bodies, John drove to the bank and closed his mother's accounts. And then he went to Westfield High School to watch his elder son play soccer. After driving John Frederick home, John List shot him repeatedly. As misfire evidence showed, his son had attempted to defend himself. John placed the bodies of his wife and his children on sleeping bags in his mansion's ballroom. He left his mother's body in the apartment attic upstairs. In a 5-page letter to his pastor found on his desk, John had claimed that he saw too much evil in the world and he wanted to save his family's souls. He then cleaned the various crime scenes, removed his pictures from all of the family photos in the house, turned a radio to a religious station and departed. The murders were not discovered until the 7th of December, nearly a month later, partly because of the family's reclusive tendencies and also due to notes John List sent to children's schools and part-time jobs claiming that the children visiting their ailing grandmother for a few weeks. Helen's mother was ill and had cancelled a visit to Westfield because of it. If she had made the trip, John List said later that she would have been his 6th victim. John List had also stopped the milk, the mail, and the newspaper deliveries. And neighbours noticed that all of the mansion's rooms were illuminated day and night with no apparent activity within the house. And after light bulbs began burning out one by one, they called the police. Officers entered through an unlocked window leading to the basement and then discovered the family's bodies. In Westfield, it had few violent crimes in 1963, but it received national attention as the site of one of the most notorious felonies in New Jersey. Police investigated hundreds of leads, but without success, searching for John List. All reliable photos of John had been destroyed, and the family's green 1963 Chevrolet Impala sedan was found parked at John F. Kennedy Airport in New York City. But police found no evidence that John had boarded a flight. Was this to throw the police off his trail? The family's home, Breeze Knoll, remained empty until it was destroyed by fire, strangely, in August 1972, 9 months after the murders. And although the destruction was officially ruled as arson, it still remains unsolved, with no suspects. I'm sure they possibly had someone in mind. Destroyed along with the home was the ballroom's stained glass skylight, rumoured to be a Tiffany original worth at least $100,000 at the time, and equivalent to $730,000 now. A new house was built on the site in 1974, and the FBI later found that John List had travelled by train from New Jersey to Michigan, then to Colorado, before settling in Denver in 1972. And while police were still searching for John, he took an accounting job under the name of Robert Peter, or Bob Clark, the name of one of his college classmate who later said he never even knew John. From 1979 to 1986, John List worked at a paper box manufacturer just outside of Denver. He joined a congregation and ran a carpooling service for church members without transport. And at one gathering, John List met his second wife, Army PX Clark Dolores Miller, and they married in 1985. Can you imagine if she'd have actually known what he'd been doing prior he met her? In February 1988, the couple moved into a house in the Vandermill neighborhood of Virginia, where John List resumed work as an accountant at a small firm, and John List's new world as Robert Clark would crumble in May 1986 when a program came on the TV. It was called Fox's America's Most Wanted. It aired the 18-year-old crime case in its first year on the television. The segment included an age-progressed burst of what John List was supposed to look like now. This was created by forensic artist Frank Bender, and it closely resembled John List's appearance. Less than 2 weeks after this show aired on the 1st of June, John List was arrested after a Denver neighbor recognized the description and alerted the authorities. John List stood by his alias for months, even after being extradited in 1989 to Union County. But it was only when presented with the irrefutable evidence on February 1990, including the matching fingerprints from when he was booked and List's military records, that he confessed. At the trial, John List claimed that he had murdered his family after years of hidden financial difficulties. He claimed that in 1971 he was laid off from the closure of the New Jersey bank and continued dressing and maintaining the same routine, and instead of working, he would sit in the train station reading newspapers. He would divert his mother's money into his account. And as the years progressed, he secretly enlisted his children's help and got them to seek employment so they would gain maturity and responsibility, but really, he just wanted the money. John List also claimed that his wife Helen had untreated syphilis, which she'd contracted from her ex-husband and concealed from him for 18 years. Helen reportedly pressured John into marriage after falsely claiming that she was initially pregnant. She also pressured him to get married in Maryland, as the state didn't require premarital syphilis testing. Through her deteriorating health, Helen didn't say anything to John or physicians until 1969, when she had an examination and it revealed the condition. And according to testimony, the alcoholism and illness transformed her into an unkempt and paranoid recluse who would humiliate him and compare his sexual prowess to her first husband. It was important to note that this is all according to John, the murderer who restarted his life after slaughtering his whole family, leaving behind a letter to his pastor in which he did claim that it was to save the souls from the evil. Psychiatrists said that John likely saw two options: accept welfare or kill his family and send them to heaven. Welfare was unacceptable because it would expose him to his family's ridicule, violate his father's teachings. But I like to point out that murdering your whole family probably also goes against teachings. On April 12, 1990, John List was convicted of 5 murders in the first degree, and at his sentencing hearing, he pleaded for forgiveness, but the judge was unpersuaded. John Emil List is without remorse and without honour, he said. After 18 years, 5 months and 22 days, it is now time for the voices of Helen, Alma, Frederick and John to all rise from the grave. John List was sentenced to 5 terms of life in prison to be sentenced consecutively. John List died of complications from pneumonia, aged 82, on March 21, 2008, while imprisoned at San Francisco Medical Center in Trenton, New Jersey. His family, rest in peace.